Hello and welcome to another in a series of technology tips published by K2 Enterprises. My name is Tommy Stevens, and it will be my pleasure today to show you how you can take advantage of Excel's Transform Data by Example add-in. This is a fantastic tool that allows us to go in and very quickly build customized transformations of our data instead of having to write lengthy formulas to perhaps transform our data or even perhaps going in and manually applying transformations. I think you're going to like what you see with Transform Data by Example. It's a wonderful add-in that Microsoft makes available to each and every one of us. So as we get started with our discussion on Transform Data by Example, just a couple of background items before we jump into demo mode. First and foremost, recognize that this is supported in Excel 2016 and newer for Windows. It is also supported in Excel 2016 for the Mac. Additionally, it is supported, I was about to say exported, my apologies, in Excel Online. So if you're in a newer version of Excel for Windows or for Mac, including Office 365 based versions, from which I will be demonstrating today, then you definitely have access to Transform Data by Example. Now, this is a free tool. However, you must download and install it first. This is not something that is already on your computer. It's not something that gets set up as part of a standard Microsoft Office implementation. Rather, you are going to have to reach out to the website, more specifically Microsoft's website, and download and install this tool. To do that, I will provide you with this abbreviated URL, of course using a bit.ly link. The full URL is rather lengthy, so I thought it would be much easier just to give you the bit.ly link that you see here. And I will leave that on screen for a few moments to give you ample time to jot that down. Hopefully you've had a chance to grab that by now. Just in case you did not, I will make sure to put that up again at the end of the demonstration. Now we are about to jump into demo mode and show you how you can take advantage of Transform Data by Example. To do that though, and to fully really appreciate what Transform Data by Example is doing, we are first going to look at a feature that got added to Excel in the 2013 release called Flash Fill. Because if you understand Flash Fill, then you will be much further down the path toward understanding Transform Data by Example. So let's start with Flash Fill, then jump into Transform Data by Example. As you can see, I have jumped into Excel to begin this demonstration on Flash Fill, which, as I said, will take us into the Transform Data by Example. Flash Fill, of course, was added to the 2013 release of Excel. Essentially, if you're not aware of Flash Fill, it is pattern recognition software. It looks at patterns in our data and transforms the data based on these patterns. In this first example, notice that the data in column A and column B, we have what appears to be a phone list, or at least the beginnings of a phone list. And notice that the data in column A is arranged last name, followed by a comma, followed by the first name, and then, of course, we have the phone numbers, unformatted phone numbers, that is, in column B. Now, for this list to be more useful, perhaps to me, I would really prefer to have the first name followed by the last name with no comma in between, and I would like the phone numbers to be properly formatted so that they're easier to read. I could transform the data in column A and column B rather quickly using several different methods depending upon the volume of data that we're dealing with. For example, in cell C2, I could potentially write a formula to convert the name that's in cell A2 into the name in the proper arrangement, or at least the arrangement that I would want. However, since all of our names in column A are of differing lengths, that type of formula is going to be fairly, well, let me say it differently, moderately complex. It would likely involve some left functions and some mid functions and some right functions and some length functions. It would be a little bit time consuming and perhaps a little bit error prone while we built it. Frankly, the formula to convert the phone number that's in cell B2 into that's in cell D2 would be relatively simple because all of the phone numbers are indeed 10 characters, 10 digits. So this is where Flash Fill proves to be really useful. With Flash Fill, I can simply type the pattern that I want matched. In this case, I have typed into cell C2 Christy Abercrombie, and I have typed in the properly formatted phone number into cell D2. With the patterns in place in cells C2 and D2 respectively, I can then go to the Data tab of the ribbon And in this data tools grouping, about just past halfway toward the right hand side of the data tab of the ribbon, you will see flash fill. Now notice that I have clicked on cell C2. Momentarily, I'm going to click flash fill. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. And we see that flash fill utilized the pattern that had been established in cell C2 to automatically fill in the rest of this data range. And as you can see, the range goes down for some period of time. Looks like we have, close to 60 different entries in that data range. And Flashfill got all of the names 100% correct. That's pretty impressive. Let's go to cell D2. Again, in cell D2 with the pattern already there, let's click Flash Fill, and Flash Fill fills in the phone numbers. However, notice that Flash Fill did not get the phone number in cell D2 correct, nor did it get the phone number in cell D11 correct, nor did it get any of the phone numbers that start with 650 correct. Flash Fill made a mistake, but it is willing to learn from its mistake if you're willing to teach it. For example, let's double click into cell D2 so that we can jump into editing mode, and let's replace that 0 with a 5. That should be 5553422. Pressing the enter key, Flashfill not only corrected the entry in cell D3, but it also corrected the entry in cell D11, and frankly all of the other entries down below where the phone number began with 650. Flashfill uses pattern recognition software to perform its work, and it's quite good at what it does, although it's not perfect. And from time to time, as illustrated, we may have to go in and make a few manual corrections. Now, if you understand what Flashfill is doing, at least at a conceptual level, you understand what Flashfill is doing, then you are going to be much further down the path toward understanding transform data by example. Let's jump over to that workbook and get into transforming the data by example. Perhaps a reasonable way of thinking about transform data by example is to think of it as a more advanced version of Flashfill. Now keep in mind, as I said earlier, you will need to download this add-in, and once you download the add-in, it will then appear on the Data tab of your ribbon. You can see it out here on the far right-hand side of the Data tab of my ribbon. That's where it appears by default. Of course, you could customize and change that location if you wanted. Notice in this illustration, the phone numbers that are in column A are much more complex and much less standardized than the phone numbers we were looking at previously. Even though I have established my pattern for how I want those phone numbers to appear in column E, if I were to try and run Flashfill, Flashfill would do a marginal job at best, as you can see, on actually converting those phone numbers. So Flashfill is not going to be adequate in this example to handle the complexity of the data that we're looking at. Instead, what we will do is, just as we did with Flashfill, we will establish patterns. Transform data by example typically recommends at least 2, if not more, entries to confirm the pattern. So I've got 3 entries in column B that establish my pattern. I then click anywhere underneath where I've established the pattern for the data, and I click Transform Data by Example out on the right-hand side of the Data tab of my ribbon. Now I'm going to widen out that task pane so you can see it just a little bit better. The task pane is providing us with step-by-step instructions. It says in step 1, enter a couple of examples, at least 2, on how you want your data to look. Well, we've done that. Step number 2, select any empty cell in the column that you want filled in. I've selected cell B4. And then step number 3, click the Get Transformations button near the bottom. Now, when I click on Get Transformations, it's now going in, analyzing my data, and comparing that data to known patterns of data that it has recognized before. It is giving me numerous options, and I'm just going to roll my mouse from top to bottom. It's giving me numerous options on how I want my data transformed. Obviously, the first option is no good. The second option is no good, or at least incomplete. But look, when I get the mouse down on the third option, it's recognizing all of that data based on, as I said, it's pattern recognition software compared to the examples that it has on file. It's done a perfect job of analyzing that data, and all I have to do now is to click this little lightning bolt icon on the right-hand side of that task pane. Upon clicking that, that applies those transformations. Now my data is perfectly transformed. As you can see, I've extracted all of the phone numbers out and see that the data that's in these cells, if you're looking in the formula bar, you will notice that that is not a formula, nor was it in flash fill, by the way, but rather these are hard-coded constants now. So if we wanted to, we could go in, for instance, and delete column A at this point, which I will do, and not affect the transformation. You're certainly not limited to phone numbers here. You can transform names, addresses, virtually any type of data that you can go in and establish patterns that transform data, by example, can recognize. Marvelous, marvelous tool. Price is free. Let's take advantage of it to reduce the number of formulas we're writing in Excel. Now I'm going to pop that URL back on screen for you in just 1 second. And as you can see, there it is. I'll leave this up on the screen for just a bit to give you ample time to copy it down. While you're doing that, I will just reach out and say thanks. I hope that this tip has been useful to you. We encourage you to come back to our YouTube channel and periodically visit us. We try to get new videos out several times each month, and hopefully you find this type of content to be useful. On behalf of everyone at K2 Enterprises, once again, thanks for joining us. We hope that we'll have the opportunity of serving you again real soon.